Hello and welcome to the weekly mortgage rate update. I'm Anthony Smith, senior economist here at Realtor.com, and we got a rise this week for the Freddie Mac 30-year mortgage rate, moving to 6.49%, a 6 basis point move from last week. For the coverage breakdown, we get to bring on my colleague Joel Berner, also senior economist here at Realtor.com, and he'll be with us in just a moment. But before we bring him on, a quick overview for what kind of went down over the most recent week and this week. So last week we described the conflict in Iran as a roller coaster because there's been so many ups and downs. However, there were consistent weeks of promising talks and even ceasefires reached. However, things are escalating once again. We saw more upward movement in the 10-year Treasury yield, and we'll also have updates for the CPI that we'll be watching in the coming week. But to tell us more about the most recent week for the Freddie Mac mortgage rate developments, let's bring on my colleague, senior economist Joel Berner. So, Joel, we got a tick up this week, and you put out your expectations yesterday, and you were spot on. So, curious what went into your thought process this week?
Yeah, so we've just seen interest rates generally, which we track in the form of the 10-year Treasury yield, tick up as this kind of ceasefire in Iran sort of unraveled bit by bit by bit over the week. I think it spooked some of those same fears that we've been talking about for the last several months, especially with related to oil shock-induced inflation. And if shipping through the Strait of Hormuz continues to be compromised, then we're going to continue to see the upward pressure on mortgage rates that we saw in earlier in the spring. You'll recall we got down below 6% for just 1 week in in late February, and then saw months of increase from there before the recent kind of pullback a little bit in rates. So I think the war in Iran is proving to be a very direct driver of mortgage rates, and so it's something we're keeping a close eye on.
One of the other things I'm curious on is the labor market. We got the jobs report last week, a bit softer than, of course, we want to see. Do you think this will be something that will play into mortgage rates overall in the grand scheme of things, especially as we're looking at maybe potential Fed decisions?
Yeah, if we're talking about Fed decisions, I don't see the Fed really focusing on the most recent jobs report and making that something they're going to act on or act in accordance with. Really, I think the big thing we're concerned about is inflation, and that's the big thing the Fed is concerned about as well. That's going to have the biggest effect on mortgage rates and have the biggest effect on the Fed making any decision. It's unlikely that we're going to get any cuts from the Federal Reserve, even with some soft labor market numbers that come in because of that threat of inflation. And now, with the ceasefire sort of unraveling, there's even more cause for concern on the inflation front. So I think the Fed's going to keep its eyes squarely there and is unlikely to have any kind of cuts that would be in the effort of boosting the labor market. Actually, the unemployment rate fell a little bit in the most recent jobs report, even as the job hiring numbers came in a little below expectation, which is further evidence that the Fed probably is not going to act to juice the labor market by any means.
It's such like this whiplash effect when you're looking at not just, of course, developments in Iran with the conflict there, but also with expectations from the Fed, so at the beginning of the year, there were talks of maybe two cuts this year. Now we're fast forwarding and we're talking about, I've heard talks of maybe two hikes. And so it's just an ever developing situation. So it's going to be definitely interesting to see how this plays out. But one of the things I have to pick your mind on, of course, whenever we have you on, we have to ask, how is the new home sell or the new home segment performing? What are we seeing on that side?
Yeah, we're seeing some softness in new homes. I think there are several reasons for that. One of them is that new construction activity tends to be concentrated in the South and West, which are regions where the local markets tend to be better supplied. So new construction is happening and kind of putting itself in a tough position because they came in, the builders did after during and after the pandemic era buying frenzy in response to the increased demand in a lot of these southern metros. And they built a lot of homes and now are at a position where they're focused on their building inventories have recovered to pre-pandemic levels. That's true of a lot of southern and western markets, that the number of homes for sale today is at or above the level it was before the pandemic. While in the Northeast and in Midwest, in most markets, the opposite is true. They're still struggling with an inventory pinch from the COVID era buying frenzy, and that's where new construction is less active. So we're seeing new construction kind of in a slow spot in terms of the number of sales coming through and in the amount of new construction activity that's being permitted going forward, because builder confidence is especially low. Builders are kind of getting squeezed on all sides. It's the same story we've been telling for a while now. Increased costs of land, increased costs of labor are really squeezing builders on one side, and then soft buyer demand because of these high mortgage rates, because of low consumer confidence, are kind of shrinking their buyer pool at the same time. And so they're having to be really aggressive with price cuts and incentives just to get inventory moved. And so builders are, being seeing their profit margins compressed from both sides right now. So it's a little bit of a tough scenario right now for builders, just because that demand is softening. And so one of the things that we're looking for is with the passage of this new federal housing bill, if in the years to come, that will incite some local governments in places where there's not a lot of new construction activity to welcome more new construction activity, bring in builders and developers, and allow them to deliver inventory to the markets, most of them in the Northeast and Midwest, where inventory just hasn't been able to catch up. So tough, current situation for builders, but some hope of new opportunities in the years to come.
Yeah, that bill is gonna be really interesting to see how it really impacts the market, and as you said, some light at the end of the tunnel with seeing how this will impact for some years to come. It's also really intriguing how it can be such a different landscape throughout the country. Of course, we put out our overviews for what we expect and what we see in the national level, and then, of course, at the metro level. But there can be so much variance from what we see. So I think this also a nice little time to plug. We have our market clock as well that you can check out because if you're looking at the median level and you're hearing some of this information and maybe that just doesn't hit home for you, you can also check out our market clock to get a more drilled in data point for your area so you can see what's happening locally to you. So you can check that out, of course, at Realtor.com/research. But speaking of our overview, Joel, we just put out our mid-year forecast. Can you give us a high level overview from that?
High level overview, we walked back our projection of home sales just a little bit, from about a 2% increase over last year to about a 1% increase over last year. So modestly pulled that back just a little bit, and also pulled back our projection for home appreciation in terms of price on existing homes, again from about 2% gain year over year to about a 1% gain year over year. So we're projecting a little bit of softness in the market this year to close out 2026. Still an improvement over 2025, but not back to pre-pandemic levels of home sales by any means. And at the same time, we're projecting further relief from rental rates across the country. So a lot of people right now are deciding to remain renters for longer. That's a phenomenon that we're seeing as the median age of the first-time home buyer continues to grow. So we're seeing that the conditions that lead to that outcome will probably continue through the rest of the year.
Is really interesting because we put out our forecast at the beginning of the year, and I think there were some thoughts around, okay, do they have the mortgage rate a bit too high? And really what we've seen was that it was really on point and really a great forecast. And it's going to be interesting to see how everything continues to play out. And as you mentioned, we have subtle changes here at the mid-year, but definitely still feeling very confident on our outlook, especially for that new refresh mid-year piece that we just put out. And of course, as I mentioned with the market clock, you can check that one out over on realtor.com/research. But speaking of releases, Joel, you had an amazing reception to your state report card report. Can you tell us what goes into the grade and what were some of the top states?
Yeah, so we graded all 50 states and the District of Columbia on metrics related to two key kind of components of the score. That's affordability and home building. So we had two affordability metrics. We did the median test, which is for the median earner in a given geography, how much of their income would be spent on a mortgage payment for the median priced home. And then we also used our realtor's affordability curve score, which ranks how much of the inventory is available to folks at different parts of the income distribution. So it takes into account lower and higher earners and lower and higher pieces of the home listing population as well. So those give us a sense into how affordable a market is. And we also look at how much a home or how much a geography is building. And so for these state report cards, we looked at the permit to population ratio. So for every 1,000 people in the state, how many permits for new homes are being issued? And then we also looked at the new construction premium, which is just the price difference between new construction homes and existing homes, to be able to see if builders are not only building a lot in these states, but building affordably, that people can access and that is price competitive with existing homes. So we put all those rankings together, ranked each one of them individually, and made a combined aggregate score. And some of our top states mostly came from the South and the Midwest, and our top four states were Indiana took the top spot, followed by Iowa, Texas, and South Carolina. So some Midwest, some South, some states that do really well on affordability, like Iowa, and some states that do really well on building, like Texas and South Carolina. So there wasn't really a runaway winner, which I was kind of surprised to see. Mostly states that did well in affordability terms or states that did well in home building terms. But in any case, something that we're really trying to shed light on is the supply gap in the country and trying to see which states are doing their part to address that supply gap. And this report is meant to be a little bit of recognition on that front.
Yeah, that reasoning really makes sense, and of course puts away any of my thoughts of potential bias that you might have towards Iowa or Texas, being our representative from there. But it definitely makes sense. It definitely makes sense, especially when you're looking at the opportunities to build, as you mentioned in Texas, and what you can buy in Iowa. Speaking of fresh off the press, Joel, you just put out your foreclosures report as well. Were there any surprising takeaways there?
Yeah, I think the biggest surprise there was just how big of a discount these foreclosure homes sell at. When they get foreclosed on, go through the auction process and don't sell, and eventually become what's called an REO or real estate owned listing, they go up on the MLS being sold by the banks. And when they do sell, sell for about a 27% discount against their valuation. And, there are a lot of reasons for that, a lot of kind of complexities with buying a foreclosed home. Some condition issues are always in play, and we're looking at the price after those condition issues have been negotiated. So it's not all just a free money for buyers. A lot of these buyers are savvy investor types or really handy flipper types who can do that work or are willing to take on that risk. But if they do, they can get really good prices on some of these homes. So I thought that was interesting. And then just the location of these foreclosure listings where they tend to concentrate, mostly in lower cost markets. So even the discount that we're seeing is happening from a low starting point. So there are some bargains to be had in terms of buying these foreclosure homes. So that I think was the most surprising and interesting piece.
And of course, the other one you can go over to Realtor.com to check out, Realtor.com/research, I should say. And Joel, in closing, we have elevation with the Iran conflict once again, that tick up in mortgage rates. We did have a bit of a mixed report for jobs. Um, and you just gave us a bit of an overview for foreclosures, but curious, can you leave us with any good news?
There is good news. The good news is that the market continues to move in a buyer friendly direction. It's especially friendly toward buyers with cash who don't have to deal with these mid 6% mortgage rates. But for buyers, prices are coming down. Inventory is growing slowly now, much more slowly than it was, but still growing. And time on market is about as slow as it was last year, which was slower than the years before. So things have kind of moved into this buyer-friendly world where if you've got the money to make a purchase, you can really find yourself a good deal. So the good news is for first-time home buyers, the opportunity is there if you continue to save and can make an aggressive down payment. Then we can avoid some of the other pieces we've talked about, like these foreclosures having occurred in the places where a lot of these buyers had small equity stakes in their homes. So I think the moral of the story is take advantage of the decline in rents right now and save, 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 and be able to make a formidable down payment on a home because there are great prices out there and there are a lot of options out there for you to choose from. So when the time is right, when the home presents itself that meets your needs and meets your budget, you'll be ready to act.
Joel, I think that is a fantastic game plan for some prospective buyers out there, especially those that maybe are looking at renting right now, especially with that news that rents are coming down pretty regularly throughout much of the country. Joel, thanks so much for joining this week, and we're looking forward to catching up with you again soon.
Yeah, Anthony, thanks for having me. We'll see you next time.
And that's going to do it for this week's coverage for the mortgage rate update. But if you want more insight around macroeconomic trends and housing, you can head on over to Realtor.com/research for all of our latest reports and analysis. Also, if you missed last week's episode, you can definitely check that out. We have our very own chief economist Daniel Hell on that one. But thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one.